So welcome to the video. Today we're going to take a look at how to do a Kruskal Wallis test on version 31 of SPSS. So we're usually going to use the Kruskal Wallis test when we have an independent between participants or between subjects categorical variable comprised of at least 3 levels, and when we have a continuous or ordinal dependent variable. So for this example, we're going to take a look at some data from this paper I have open here. So it's a paper about how sensitive medical students in Germany were to gender issues. So we're going to look at how sensitive these students were to gender issues across 4 different universities to see whether there's any difference. So that's what this study is about, and this is where I got the data from. If you're interested in getting the data file for yourself, you can check out the link in the description for this website, and you'll be able to download the data file. So this is what the original data file looks like. So it's quite big and has lots of different variables. So I've just simplified it. Basically, I've just taken a couple of variables from this data file to create my own. So here we just have 2 columns where we have university in one column. So there's actually 4 different numbers in this column to represent the 4 different universities that were considered. And here we have people's scores on this question. So it is not necessary to consider gender differences in presentation of complaints. So here we have 1 equals fully agree, 5 equals fully disagree, and then we have different levels of agreement in between. So if a person has a 5 for this answer, fully disagree, it would indicate a high level of gender sensitivity because this question is worded as it is not necessary to consider gender differences in presentation of complaints. And then we just have 1 to 4 to represent these different universities. So let's take a look at how to put these data into SPSS. So we're just going to go down to data view, and then we'll go up to this top cell in the name column, and we'll give a name to the independent variable. So let's call that university, and then we'll give a name to the dependent variable in the cell below. So let's call this gender sensitivity, and I'm going to put a underscore between the 2 words because SPSS doesn't allow us to use spaces here. So once we've done that, we can tell SPSS what the levels of this independent variable are. So we'll go to this values column here, and we'll click on the cell, and then we'll click on this little box that comes up, and then we'll tell SPSS what the numbers represent in terms of the universities. So let's click on this plus button, and then we'll go to 1. So 1 equals Berlin, 2 is Jena, 3 is Munich, and 4 is going to be Cologne. So those are the 4 universities. So we'll just go to OK once this looks like this. And then we can go to this measures column, and we can say that university was a nominal variable, and we can say that gender sensitivity was a ordinal variable. So once we've done that, let's go over to data view, and we can see that these names appear at the top of these 2 columns. So we can now just copy and paste the data from the Excel file into SPSS. So we're going to select the top left piece of data, and then we're going to scroll all the way down to the bottom of this data set. So we have hundreds of people in this data set, and then while holding shift, we're going to press the bottom right piece of data. Then we'll go to Command or Control C to copy those data. Then we'll go back to SPSS, we'll go to the top left cell, and we'll press Command or Control V to paste those data in, or we can just go up to edit and then down to paste. So here we can see that we have the names of the cities where the universities are based, rather than the numbers that we allocated to those cities. And that's because in the view menu we have value labels selected. If we unselect that, we just see the numbers instead. We could also allocate these descriptions we looked at before to the numbers in the other column, but it's the same process as we followed to tell SPSS what the university numbers represented. To run the test, we can go up to Analyze, and then down to Non-Parametric Tests, then across to Legacy Dialogues, then over to K Independent Samples, and we can see that we have Kruskal Wallis selected already here. We can transfer our independent variable to the grouping variable box and our dependent variable to the test variable list. Next, we click on the independent variable and then on define range. And here we're just going to use the numbers that we used to describe the different cities in which the universities are based. So the lowest number we used was 1 and the highest number we used was 4. So we can just put those there. Then we can go to continue and then we can go to OK. So that's going to run the test for us. it doesn't actually provide us with any median values, and medians are usually the type of descriptive statistic that we report with this type of non-parametric test. So to generate these, we can go up to Analyze and then down to Compare Means and Proportions, then across to Means, and then we can transfer our independent variable to the independent list, and we can transfer our dependent variable to the dependent list. We can go to Options, and we can remove any stats that we don't want from this menu by using this arrow. And let's just transfer a median, which we can find at the top of this menu, over to this box here. Then we can go to Continue and then to OK, and that's going to provide us with these medians here. So before interpreting these results, let's just take a quick look at how to create a graph. So to do this, we can go up to Graphs, and then we can go down to Bar. This is fine as it is, so we can go to Define. Then we can transfer our independent variable to the category access box, and we can transfer our dependent variable to this box, but we first just need to select Other Statistic. So we'll click that, then we'll transfer this over. And because the medians are usually reported when we have a non-parametric test that is comparing conditions or groups, we're going to go to Change Statistic and change mean to median. So the bars in the graph are going to represent medians. Then we'll go to Continue and then to OK, and that generates that graph. If there's anything you want to change within it, you can just double click it. If you double click the bars, it opens this Properties menu. If you go to Bar Options, you can change the width of the bars. If you go over to Fill and Border, you can change the color of the bars. You can click on any text within the graph to change the size of it, for example, or to change to a different font style. So that's how we create a graph. Let's take a look now at how to interpret the results. So we generated these medians before, so we can see that in Berlin and Munich we have medians of 5, and in Jena and Cologne we have medians of 4. So Berlin and Munich have higher levels of gender sensitivity among their medical students compared to the other two cities. But we need to look at the Kruskal-Wallis test results to determine whether there was a significant difference between these cities or these universities with respect to gender sensitivity. So let's take a look at this test statistics table, and we can see here that in this ASIMP row we have a value of 0.302. So this is a p-value, and as this p-value is above 0.05, it indicates that we don't have a significant effect of the independent variable on the dependent variable. So that's how we interpret the results of the test, but let's now take a look at how to report those results. So I have an example here, and I've said that a Kruskal-Wallis test did not reveal a statistically significant difference in gender sensitivity between the universities, and then I've entered these stats. So we've said that chi-squared equals 3.65, so that's coming from this Kruskal-Wallis H row within this test statistics table, where we have a value of 3.645. So I've just rounded that to 2 decimal places. Next we have this degrees of freedom value of 3, which is what we have in this DF row of the same table. And as we saw before, we have this p-value of 0.302, which is what we have in this ASIMP row of this same table. And we also have this n equals 750 in brackets, and that's just the number of people in our study. So we can see that we have this value here of 750 in the ranks table. So that's how we report the Kruskal-Wallis test, but I've also reported these medians. So I've said that, however, sensitivity scores were higher among those in the Berlin and Munich universities compared to those in the Jena and Cologne universities. And I've inserted medians of 5 here and medians of 4 here, and that's just coming from this report table where we have these medians for each of the different cities. So that's essentially it. If you did have a significant result for your Kruskal-Wallis test, you could consider following up with Mann-Whitney U tests to gain further insights. For example, you might want to do a test to see whether there's a significant difference between Berlin and Jena or between Munich and Cologne. And that's the sort of thing you could do with the Mann-Whitney U tests. So I have a video about that as well. I'll link to that somewhere if you're interested in checking that out. But that's pretty much it for the Kruskal-Wallis test. I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments and I'll try to get back to you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.